What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, and welcome back to another show. We're going to be talking about Sonny's interview on Men in Blazers a couple of days ago. Only a short interview, but I thought it was really good. Showed, obviously, some great sides of Sonny, talking about his ambitions, what he wants his legacy to be, advice to Min-huk as well, which we'll get into. But yeah, I really enjoyed watching that interview, as to do with any Sonny interview. But look, we're missing you guys out there in Korea. We wish we were still there. We wish we were back. And we're waiting for you guys to come and visit us out here. But we're definitely missing you guys out in Korea. But in terms of the interview, let's talk about the legacy thing first and foremost, because he was saying that he doesn't consider himself a legend at this football club until he brings home that trophy. And he was saying there's only one thing on his mind, and that is winning a trophy. And he would do anything to bring that trophy to N17 and to the Tottenham fans. And that just tells you everything about the man. I mean, because he is a legend at this football club. Most assists in the Premier League era, in the top 5 goal scorers of all time at this football club. I mean, yes, he hasn't brought home the trophy as yet, but he is the captain of this football club. I mean, it just tells you everything about him, the humbleness.
Well, that's his mentality. I don't think it's about him being humble. I think it's more about that's how he defines success. He wants to get that trophy. I'm sure Harry Kane felt the same when it came to when his time he left the top. Although he left as all-time top goal scorer, I'm sure there's a big hole with him having not won that trophy, and I'm sure Son fills that hole as well. I'm sure he looks at the situation thinking, I've been at Tottenham now for it's going to be 10 years and 9 years he's been here. And, you know, it's a big club, a club that in the past, maybe not in the recent past, but in history has won quite a few trophies. And he feels that weight of expectation. He feels the weight of history of this big football club. And I think he respects the club that Tottenham is. And that's why he feels like there has to be a trophy for his time at Tottenham to feel like he's really contributed to that history. And I completely understand that. This is a high level, you know, footballer we're talking about. This is a footballer at the top of his game, elite with an elite footballer in world football with an elite mentality. And of course, he's not going to be able to rest until he's got trophies at Tottenham. And I completely understand that. And that's the kind of mentality we need at this football club.
Yeah. If only we had 11 Sonnies on the football pitch, maybe we would have won something by now. But the interviewer, I can't remember his name, the name skips my mind, from Men in Blazers, kept reiterating the fact that he's 32 years of age. He said it quite a number of times during the interview, and Sonny seemed to like sink further and further into his seat every time he mentioned that. Yeah, he did the face palm. Yeah, he said that, you know, you just blink and suddenly you go from 23 to 32, and you've been at the club for 9 to 10 years, and you know, you need to take every moment as it comes, and you need to live in the moment, and you need to just go for it, really. And that was some of the advice to Min-huk. But even myself, I can't believe that Sonny's 32 and he's been here for 9 years already.
You wouldn't believe it by looking at him as well.
Yeah.
But it only seems like yesterday he was signing for the club after a failed move by Saido Berahino.
Yeah.
And we turned to Heung-min Son, and it was kind of a very late move in the window. We needed a forward. And now we're sitting here 9 years later. He's one of the best players that's ever played for the club. He's one of the most loved players that's ever played for the club. He's captain of the club as well. But he's still got years ahead of him. And he says that. As much as we'll get into what he was saying about Min-huk, I'm sure, in a minute. But the main thing he was saying, for me, is I ain't going to give up my spot that easy. And as much as I want to encourage him, I want to help him, this is my spot, and he's going to have to earn it from me. And that's how he's thinking. He's not thinking, you know, my time's running out, you know, it's time to wind up. He's thinking, this is my spot. And as much as I want to help him, if he's going to earn it, he's going to have to fight it from me, and he's going to have to take it from me. And Son, look. You look at him even against Bayern in the friendly. He's still got that pace. He can still run very, very quickly. He's kept himself in unbelievable condition. And I think he works so hard so that when he reaches these kind of ages like 32, he can still play at the top of his game, and that's what we're seeing, I think.
Yeah, I did love that part of the interview when he was like, he's not just going to come here and I'm going to give him my spot. No, that's not what's happening. I love that part of the interview, and it just shows that fighting mentality, you know. But in terms of what he was saying about Jan Min-huk, he was saying it's going to be hard. Being in the Premier League is not easy at all. Be prepared. The language, the culture, the physicality, and just being a human and moving away from your family. I don't want to make him scared, but I want to give him a realistic warning. And when he was talking about these issues, he was very passionate about it, with obviously someone who's lived that life. Obviously, Sonny didn't come just from Korea to England, but he did the rounds, didn't he? Went to Germany and then came to London. So he maybe tasted a change of culture maybe before Jan Min-huk, because how old was he when he went to Germany? Was he younger?
Yeah, I think he was at Hamburg like 16.
Yeah, exactly. So he maybe tasted it a bit earlier. Maybe it is a bit difficult to do it a bit later, but 18 is still a very young age to do that transition from, life in Korea to life in London. And we, after going to Korea, you can see how different the culture is, and you can see how different the mentality is. And, it can be a culture shock to certain people at times. And some people take to it differently. Some people take to it quicker than others. And, it's going to be a big life lesson for Jan Min-huk to come here at the age of 18, mid-season in January, when all he's known is the K-League. And he's going to come straight into the Premier League, which is going to be faster paced, like Sonny says, more physical. So it's great words of wisdom from Sonny, isn't it?
And there's no better person to learn off from Son, who works so hard to be in the position that he is now. We've seen the documentaries with him and his dad, how hard he used to work him when he was younger in training, and what work and effort went into creating the Son Heung-min that we see today. And so these words are coming from a guy who's been there in that situation, and he had to work basically commit his life to this. And obviously I'm not saying Jan Min-huk isn't capable of that or isn't doing that. I'm sure he's a very hard worker. You don't get to elite level football without being a very hard worker and committing your life to it. But sometimes footballers can feel like, especially when they're Jan Min-huk's age and they're that young and they get a big move, sometimes they feel like they've made it and like, oh, this is it, I've done it, I've got that move, and it's like that, now you're at the top. But that is far from the truth. He's not done anything yet. This is only where it starts. This is not the end. And I think that's what just Son's reiterating to him, like, you're here. The hardest thing is not just to get here, but to stay here and to actually get your place in the Premier League, challenge in the best league of the world. K-League, he was saying K-League is nothing compared to what you're getting here. It's one thing doing in the K-League, but once you get to the Premier League, it's a completely different ball game. And I think it's important for Jan Min-huk to hear those words, because Son's been there. Son knows what it's like to come to a new country at a young age and having to compete like that. And it was difficult, even at 23, coming to Tottenham in his first season. It wasn't easy for him. He had to adjust. And this was even a Sonny who had been at Hamburg and done brilliant, been at Leverkusen, even a big club like Leverkusen, or a big club. He was there, done really well at Leverkusen. And, he would have been more ready than Jan Min-huk to come to Tottenham and hit the ground running or be a superstar. And it took him a year to really find his feet. And even he had doubts. He didn't even not only did he find a year to acclimatise, but after a year, it had gone so badly for him. He was considering leaving, and Pochettino had to talk him out of going back to. He wanted to go back to Bundesliga, where he felt at home and where he felt like he was doing well. And Poch had to talk with him and sat down and said, "No, you're right for this club. I believe in you." And it needed that talk from him to maybe for a bit more self-belief in Son. And now we're seeing the player who, you look at Son now, you can't believe he had any self-doubt at any age, but he did. And I think so these words, talking to a young player with potential, Jan Min-huk, couldn't come from a better person.
Yeah, it just shows, like, doubt can creep into anyone's mind, no matter how confident you are, no matter how good you are, no matter who you are, it can creep into you. But it's not just about acclimatizing and getting into the first team, but it's also about maintaining it as well. And for Sonny, once he did get into the team and once he did find that rhythm, he maintained it for 9 years. And it's like, I guess it's one uphill battle to get into it, but then there's another uphill battle to keep maintaining those levels for such a long period of time.
Well, you could even argue it wasn't really up until 2018, where, Sonny was obviously a good member of the squad, but you could probably argue up until 2018 he was probably seen as more of a squad player. Before then, when that Champions League run, then he became a main player. Then everyone realised, okay, this guy's actually like world class. Before then, we had Dele, we had Eriksson, we had Dele, Eriksson, and Kane in a front three, and we're playing in a back three. And it wasn't. And Son, obviously, whenever he got his opportunity, he did quite well, but he wasn't a guaranteed starter up until a few years later. And that also goes into his mentality. And so, like Yan Min-huk has definitely got a massive challenge ahead of him coming to Tottenham. Clearly he's talented. Clearly he's got all the assets to be a success here at Spurs. But it's going to need a lot of hard work, a lot of self-belief, and never giving up on that dream never giving up on that aim of being in the first team, winning your place and earning that spot. And that's exactly what Son went through. It's exactly what Son did. And now he's sitting here 9 years later as captain. And if Yan Min-huk wants a similar trajectory, he's going to have to put in the work, and he's going to have to completely buy into being at Spurs, and that's exactly what Sonny did.
Absolutely. Another thing that I found quite interesting in the interview, they asked him who his best captain ever was, who he takes inspiration from, who he models himself on. And he said for all those three things, Ji-sung Park was his best captain, is his best role model. It's who he models himself off. He said Ji-sung Park, maybe didn't say a lot, but when he did speak, you listened. He was a guy that definitely led by example. We saw that in a Man United shirt. Sir Alex always called upon him in the big games, didn't he? Whenever he needed a reliable person, Ji-sung Park was always one of the first names on the team sheet for Sir Alex. So I thought that was really interesting with the captains that he have had. There was no mention of Hugo Lloris or even Harry Kane. I know Harry Kane wasn't a proper captain, but he was definitely a leader within the team. But Ji-sung Park is the guy he models himself on. Maybe there's a perspective from outside that Sonny is like that he doesn't say a lot, but when he does speak, you listen. But you hear kind of players speaking, and they do say, well, you might think that about Sonny, but he actually does speak, and he does actually tell us how it is.
If you pay close attention on the pitch, he's not shy about having a go at players. He really isn't. And I think maybe because of how he is off the pitch, and whenever there's like PR things and whenever there's videos of in the training ground, he looks like a bubbly character having fun with the players and stuff like that. And maybe, I don't know if Spurs just neglect to show that side of him or what, but I was obviously when we were at Korea, I was obviously very much taking an extra focus on Son.
Very much zoomed in on Sonny all the time.
Yeah. And I can tell you, he is not shy about setting standards and holding players to standards, and he's not one of these captains who is just happy-go-lucky and is just trying to make everyone get along all the time. And he does do that because that's just the character he is, and he does get on with everyone. And he clearly is one of these players who a lot of the time does have a smile on his face, and he's one of these who's a great person and a great character, but he does have clearly a competitive edge to him.
Of course, you don't get this far if you don't.
And he clearly has set standards for his players, and sometimes when he's not receiving the pass or players make the wrong decision, he does have a bit of a go with them, and he's not shy about it. And that's a side to Sonny which isn't well publicised or doesn't get a lot of mention, but is definitely there if you watch. Definitely take an eye of him on the pitch, and sometimes that smile, people can be blinded by that Sonny smile and think he's just this guy who's always happy all the time. That's definitely not the case. And even in that interview, you could see it in him, in his eyes, that competitive edge. When he's talking about winning trophies, when he's talking about Yan Min-huk being at Tottenham, and talking about Ji-sung Park, I think you can clearly see how much he's learned from him, because Ji-sung Park is a player who didn't have the best ability. He's competing on the wing with players like they had a front four of Berbatov, Rooney, Tevez, and Ronaldo when he was there. Yet he was the one they always landed on in big games, as you were saying, in a squad chock-a-block of talent. Nani, people like that. He was the one always selected.
This is talked about as the best Man United team of all time.
And he was the one always selected. And I feel like Sonny is basically got the mentality of Ji-sung Park, but just with better talent and more technical
with a lot
ability.
more talent, shall I say, because Ji-sung Park had talent.
He had talent, and I remember he was very good for PSV as well, but he had nowhere near the ability of Son. But I think Son, it would be easy for a player like Son to be like an Eden Hazard type, just like, I'm not going to do any work, just give me the ball and I'll make the difference kind of thing. And even for Korea, he could, he probably has the standing in the squad to be like that. But I think because he's been under Ji-sung Park and he's seen the value of what hard work can get you, it can get you even above some of the best players in world football at the time. I think he's maintained that mentality, and he's maintained that work ethic, and that's why where he is today at 32, still at the top of his game, but also has that work ethic combined with the talent that he does have.
And he also was talking about how he sets it, or he tries to set the standards at Tottenham now, he's captain, always being the first one into training, being the first one on that football pitch, being the first one on the training pitch, being the last to leave, making sure he's not late. And, these things can have a rub-off effect, especially with such a young squad that Spurs have now. And he was talking about the importance of setting that standard and setting that, being that role model for these young players. Because if he starts coming late, even at the age of 32, you would think, coming to the end of your career, you can take your foot off the gas a little bit. But he says no, it's extra important to set the standards now, because if you're trying to bring up the next generation and set a role model to the next generation, they might think, oh, it's okay to be late. Sonny's late today. Oh, I'm going to be late tomorrow, and it won't be a problem. But it just shows you even more of the mentality that he has and the leadership abilities that he does have. He just wants to keep setting those standards.
That's why, for me, he's the perfect captain, and he's so respected. Because there are players, I'm not saying in the Spurs squad, but there are players we've seen in the past who are characters, and they do get on with everyone, and they like a laugh and a joke around the dressing room. But when they're not like the most professional. They do like a laugh and a joke, but they like to turn late. I mean, not saying just Basuma. People like him, maybe for example, like someone like a Paul Gascoigne, something like that. Like, as much as I love, Gazza was one of the best players in the world. Was he captain material? Probably not, because as much as he laughed and a joke, sometimes he took it too far, or he wasn't always professional when it got down to, doing the hard work. Yet Sonny has that side to him where he always likes to get on with the players, and he has a great relationship with every player. But the reason why he's so respected is because he doesn't let that affect professionalism. As you say, he's the hard. Not only is he's one of these. One of the jokers in the team, but he's also the hardest worker in the team. And sometimes it's hard to combine the two, but that's what gets him the respect, I think, from the whole squad. And that's why he's captain material, because if he just had that side where he gets on with everyone, that's well and good, but that doesn't make you a good captain. But that other side means that's why he's such a good captain of the team.
And that's why you hear, a lot of players in these interviews that you see on social media, the players say like Sonny's the funniest guy, but they also say he's the hardest worker as well. And I feel like you can maybe draw comparisons with that with maybe someone like Robbie Keane, because Robbie Keane was always a joker, one of the biggest jokers in the squad, but he was also one of the hardest workers. And when someone else wasn't setting the standards, he would be right in their face telling them. And I feel like Sonny is very much similar. And
he was also good. I mean, he wasn't quite captain. He was basically de facto captain because Ledley King was injured all the time. And he was
a leader.
Yeah, and he was also a great leader of the team at the time. And I think that they're very similar in that way, actually.
Yeah. So there you have it. That is our reaction to the Sonny interview in Men in Blaze. If you haven't checked it out, please go and do that. A really good interview. But thank you very much for joining us today. The season is just about to get underway. So let's hope for a big season from Spurs and a big season from Sonny. But thank you everyone for joining us today.